Marketing for a barber is not production. It's documentation plus proximity. Showing the real work to the right 100 people. And the barber who gets that beats the barber chasing a million strangers every single time. Let me split the room into two barbers, because almost every one of you is standing on one of these two paths right now. Let's call the first one the producer. He decides he's going to start doing content. So he buys a ring light. He watches other people's reels and he studies their transition. He waits until he has a real idea, a clever one, something actually worth posting. Then he scripts it up in his head. He sets up the shot. He films it 4 times and doesn't like any of the 4. Now the whole thing feels like a second job he's bad at and doesn't get paid for. 2 weeks in, he's exhausted, and he's posted twice, and both posts are him trying to be a filmmaker instead of a barber. Then he quits and tells everybody content doesn't work for barbers. Now the second barber. Call him the documenter. He doesn't have ideas. He has a Tuesday. A guy sits down with a grown-out mess and a photo on his phone. So the documenter props his own phone against the mirror and lets it run. He doesn't perform. He just talks the way he always talks. He shows the before. He shows the decision. He says, your hair grows forward here, so I'm not going to go as tight as that photo. And then he shows the after. That's the whole post. It took him no extra time because he was cutting the hair anyway. He didn't produce anything. He documented something true and real. Here's the part that matters. The producer is trying to be interesting, and the documenter is just being real. Real wins because a stranger can smell the difference in about a second and a half. And maybe you're sitting there thinking, that's fine for the transformation, but I don't have anything worth documenting. You are wrong, and I can prove it here in about 10 seconds. You're already sitting on about a week's worth of content and calling it a slow day. The consultation, where you figure out what a guy actually wants versus what he asked for. Film it. That's gold, and nobody teaches it. The honest price conversation, said out loud instead of mumbled. The moment you talk a client out of a product he doesn't need, which builds more trust than any sales pitch ever could. The kid's first haircut, the regular you've cut for 9 years. All of these are posts, and all of them already happened today, on the clock, whether you film them or not. So the shortage was never content. What you're missing is a camera propped up on a shelf instead of buried in your pocket. Underneath the producer's whole struggle sits this one lie, that marketing is a performance you bolt onto the job. It isn't. Your slowest day in the shop, filmed honestly, is better content than your best idea because the idea is about you and the slow day is about the work. People don't book a barber because his transitions are clean. They book him because they watched him make one real decision on somebody's head and thought, oh, that guy actually knows what he's doing. Let me put it in terms of a thing I'm genuinely bad at, which is fishing. I'm horrible at it. A man buys the biggest net he can afford. He drives to the coast and hurls it as far into the open ocean as his arms will throw it. He stands there all day and he pulls in some seaweed, a boot, and one fish that was never going to be dinner. That's every barber chasing viral. The barber who actually eats finds one spot, his spot, the local water. He shows up to it week after week. Before long, the fish know the sound of his boat. Now, I have to be honest about my own wiring because I'm the producer by nature. And I had to beat it out of myself, basically. I think in systems. My instinct, faced with post your work, was to build the whole rig first. The lighting, the posting schedule, the little content pipeline. A 14-step process for a thing that needed one conversation with a camera propped on a shelf. I over-engineered it until it was too complicated to actually do, which is a very sophisticated way of never actually starting. If that's you, if you've got a beautiful plan for the content you're going to make once everything is set up, I see you because I am you. The fix was not a better system. It was propping the phone against the mirror on an ordinary afternoon, or in my case, going for a walk and letting a real interaction, a real thought, or a real cut be enough. Don't take just my word for it either. Earlier this year, a barber named Grant Branham, third generation, cutting at a shop in Glasgow, Kentucky, a town of about 14,000 people, posted a transformation video like 100 other ones he'd posted. But this one caught. Within a few months, he was pulling hundreds of thousands of followers, and on his own count, something like 250 million views. Here's the number that matters for us. Clients started driving into that small Kentucky shop from 10 different states. He didn't produce a masterpiece. He documented his work consistently until one true post found the current. When a reporter asked him to explain the blow-up, he was refreshingly useless about it. He basically said, "Everything popped, and I have no idea why." I love that answer because it's the true one. You cannot predict which honest post catches the current. You can only make sure honest posts are in the water when one of them finally does. But I don't want Branham's number in your head as the goal because it will wreck you. 250 million views is a lottery ticket, not a plan. Here's the real scoreboard, and it's so much smaller than you think. You do not need to go viral. You need about 100 of the right local people to know that you cut hair. That's a full book. Do the math on your own life. Say 100 people within driving distance knew you were good and knew where you were. Each one comes every 3 to 4 weeks. You're booked top to bottom. The producer strains for 1 million strangers, and 99% of them will never be within 20 miles of his shop. Meanwhile, 100 reachable people down the street never find out that he actually exists. Stop trying to be famous. Start trying to be known, local, and specific to the people who can actually sit down. Now put real numbers on it. Say you want to be booked 4 days a week, 8 cuts a day. That's 32 spots to fill. And most of those are regulars cycling back every few weeks, not brand new faces. Even at the low end of the math, 100 loyal locals more than covers it. 100. You could nearly put names to that number. It's a neighborhood. It's a couple of office buildings. It's one busy gym. Set that beside the 1 million follower fantasy, and the whole thing stops looking like a mountain, and it starts looking like a propped up phone plus one good moment per haircut. Now go back and get the number that I asked you for at the top of the show. The people within 3 miles who actually know you cut hair. Hold it up next to 100. Whatever the distance is between those two numbers, that is the entire size of your problem. Not your fades, not your prices, not the algorithm, and not the shop's location. Here's the mercy in it. A talent gap takes years to close. A luck gap never closes at all. But this one is a knowing gap. It closes for free. You are one honest post at a time away from a completely different business. And the only thing standing in the way is that right 100 people have not been told. One thing goes in the comments today before the craft corner, and skip the humble version because I don't want it. What is the one post, one reel, one photo, one clip that has ever actually put a client in your chair? Somebody who booked and said, "I saw your work." If you've got one, it's proof that this works. If you've got none, there's your homework. Craft Corner, because everything I just said lives online right now. And the oldest, strongest marketing a barber has ever had happens in the chair. It happens off camera and it costs nothing. It's the one thing the whole internet is a copy of anyway. And one person telling another person that you have to go see my guy is it. Here's the problem though. Most of your cuts are good, and good does not get talked about. Nobody walks out of a good haircut and texts a friend, hey, just got a solid, competent haircut. Good is the price of being open. Good is essentially invisible. The client is happy, he pays, he leaves. And he says nothing to anybody because nothing happened worth saying. You can give 400 good haircuts in a row and generate exactly 0 word of mouth. Then you wonder why the referrals aren't coming. Picture the last genuinely good haircut you gave. Clean, dialed in, the guy nodded at the mirror and you felt it because he meant it. Then he walked out and told absolutely nobody because good is precisely what he expected when he booked with you. Expectation met is not a story. Expectation beaten is a story. Slow down for 10 honest seconds and do the one thing he wasn't expecting, and you hand him something his mouth can't help but repeat later. My favorite version of this costs exactly $0. Catch the detail he stopped even bothering to mention. Maybe it's the cowlick in the back he assumes every barber is going to fight him on. Maybe it's how he actually parts it on a work day versus a Saturday. Name it before he does, or fix it without being asked. You've just become the barber who finally got it, and that sentence travels farther than any fade. So here's the technique, and you can run it starting with your very own next client. Every cut, plan one thing they'll text a friend about. One thing above the haircut. Not a bigger fade somehow, but a moment. It can be tiny. You remembered his kid just started kindergarten, and you asked about the first week by name. You caught him tugging the left side, and you fixed a thing he'd stopped mentioning to barbers because nobody ever listened, nobody ever cared. You gave him 30 seconds of honest, true advice on growing it out instead of upselling him product that he doesn't need. The hot towel he wasn't expecting. It could be anything, but one deliberate moment that is not the transaction. Because here's what happened. Because here's what a moment does that a good fade cannot. A good fade gives him a haircut. A moment gives him a story. And a story is the only thing he can actually carry out of your shop and hand to somebody else. Yeah, my barber's good ends the conversation, but my barber remembered my kid's name and talked me out of buying pomade I didn't need. That's a real story. Stories get repeated at the next barbecue and in the group chat and at the office. You're not just cutting hair, you're handing every satisfied client a small, specific thing to say about you when your name comes up. That's word of mouth, engineered on purpose, one client at a time. So this week, what's the one moment you're going to plant? And if a client of yours has ever texted a buddy about something you did, tell me what it was. Put it in the comments. I promise you, it most likely was not the fade.